Dolzer now from Kelag Interenergo on renewable energy supply for energy-intensive industries. Martin, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you also for the invitation and to give me the opportunity to talk about a really exciting topic about power purchase agreements and about renewable energy supply for energy-intensive industries. I really like to ask this question also to Pierre before, because I think also that topic is very much connected to having energy in an affordable way available, and that's one opportunity that we have, which I would like to present to you. I would like to start with a short company introduction, then basically tell you I'm heading the trading department at Kelag, which is based here in Austria, in Klagenfurt, just to talk a bit about what we do in trading here, then about where do we see PPAs in the whole market design actually. So there are other opportunities also to secure supply, of course. PPAs are just one form of that. And then I would talk a bit about which models are available, which business models are behind that, and then also a bit about the markets that we see, because there are quite some differences between, let's say, the maturity of different PPA markets, and closing with a few, let's say, key takeaways. So if we jump into that, Kelag, as I said, based in Austria, here in Klagenfurt, a company that has been established 100 years ago, and is active, or we're active in the whole or entire value chain, as you can see. So starting with generation, we are operating hydropower plants, wind farms, and photovoltaic plants also. So we historically started with hydropower mainly, and are also operating some flexibilities there. So pump storage power plants, for example, but also run-of-river power plants, and then wind farms and solar, which is now the primary focus, as it is not possible to really let's say, do hydropower plants in an easy way because of certain regulatory things, and then also certain environmental restrictions, let's say. Then we're also active in energy trading, basically since the liberalization of the market in 2001 in Austria, mainly asset-based trading or asset-backed trading. We do trade in 2 locations. We have a trading floor here in Klagenfurt, and we have a trading floor in Ljubljana, which is also doing some prop trading. And that's actually the unit or the business unit which I'm heading at this company. Then said fully integrated, we also operate the distribution grid here in Carinthia. We have also sales, especially in Austria, for industry clients, also then international, but household customers, smaller customers only in Austria. So there we're talking about roughly 300,000 customers that we have, and also about the portfolio of different energy services. So from services related to e-mobility, where we are supplying hardware, offering contracts and things like that, to contracting models, PV rooftop topics and things like that. And then last but not least, we are one of the biggest heat providers in Austria. So we're operating 78 district heating systems and around 1,000 heating centers for like bigger buildings, which we are supplying with heat mainly out of biomass. Yeah? Then shortly on our ownership structure and what are the markets in which we are present. So, I mean, really just shortly, we're basically owned by 3 entities. One is the German utility RWE, then the local country of Carinthia, and then also the Austrian utility Verbund, each of them roughly owning 1 share, which still makes us a bit unique within Austria. So we're not, I mean, we are, according to legislation, a majority state owned, but we still have quite a nice influence, and I think, quite a dynamic influence, especially from our shareholder RWE, which we definitely highly appreciate. Then below that, it's basically the companies, I have to say, not go into any details here, but it's basically the subsidiaries and companies that we have for the international business, for the core competencies or business units that I just mentioned before. And then maybe just highlighting this also, we do also own a share in Verbund hydropower. So it's roughly a share of 10%. So that's basically the biggest unit in Austria, where we have most of the generation out of hydropower plants. What you see on the right side of this slide is our footprint in terms of markets. So we're based in Austria, but also then with a strong presence in most of the markets that you can see here. So we are trading in 17 markets at the moment, and we are invested in 14 markets at the moment. In total, it's around a bit less than 100 hydropower plants that we have, 7 wind farms, 30 photovoltaic plants, and a total energy production of 3.4 terawatt hours at the moment. So we have, as mentioned already, roughly 300,000 customers in Austria, mainly, and then industry clients are also abroad. And at the moment, we are in the range of, or a bit more actually, than 2,000 employees. Yeah? If we go to this value chain, or the energy trading value chain, and it's basically just a short summary of what we are doing in trading here. We also start from generations. We are selling these, as mentioned, 3.4 terawatt hours of generation that we have in Austria, but also then outside of Austria. So the marketing or the offtake of the energy there is something that we have centralized. We're centrally doing that from Klagenfurt and making sure that we are selling our generation to the best possible price. The market for us is always the reference, of course. So we're active on the wholesale markets in the respective 17 countries, and that's always the reference point for us. And on the other side of the value chain, we are procuring a sales portfolio of roughly 4 terawatt hours that we have at the moment, and we also actively sourcing that. Speaking about this aggregator role, which is also something that is, I would say, partially new, and lots of people talking about that now, also in connection to demand side response and things like that. In fact, we are an aggregator already for the last 20 years, because we are aggregating volumes from the generation side with the sales side, linking it via the market. And as mentioned, we also operate some flexible assets. We're really happy about that, because due to renewables and the volatility coming from renewables, these flexible assets are really an asset also going forward. And it really helps us also to balance overall and really play, or not just play, I mean, basically do this aggregator function, which we're constantly developing also then in the future. And then that's basically the main topic also of today's presentation. And then you see here power purchase agreements crossing actually everything from generation to sales. So what does that mean? How do you locate, let's say, a power purchase agreements? Looking at the electricity market design, because what I would like to show is that it's just one opportunity or one form where you can secure your supply. There are also other things. What you see on this slide is actually a time scale from like 1 second all the way to 100 to 20 years, and then even plus 20 years. Yeah? And it actually starts here with the first three topics here, like FCR, AFRR, MFRR, which are basically ancillary services. That stuff that is really on the short term, like from seconds to a few minutes, and making sure that the grid is stable, so that we always have the necessary frequency of the grid, and that's basically really where we are very much on a physical level, and where it's really about the security of supply of reserves that we need, and all of that. Yeah? And then it goes by the intraday markets, everything that happens basically within the day, to the day ahead market. We all know the spot prices, the famous spot prices, which are connected to that. And then also to the forward market, which we are also dividing into OTC, so over the counter, which are bilateral contracts, and then also exchanges, so futures that you could trade, and things like that. And then you see basically from 1 year, start from 1 year all the way to 20 years, and some of the PPAs have been done even longer than that, private long-term contracts, and for example, power purchase agreements. What you have on top of that is, and that's also driven by the European Union, is sort of state-owned long-term contracts. So you sure you heard about CFDs, so contracts for difference, which the European Union is also promoting, especially to be able to finance new projects then going forward. Yeah? And our, let's say, sweet spot here is this private long-term contracts, where, and we'll get to that and also at the later point, which I said one element to secure supply. What we see also in practice is that the PPAs that we have concluded so far, they are different in terms of the time horizons that we did. Yeah? So basically everything from, I would say, 1 year all the way to the maximum we did so far was 12 years now. And they're also different in certain other elements which we will discuss then, or which I will highlight then later on. But the main message here is it's actually one opportunity to secure supply. And on the bottom here, you see a few other elements of those markets where you say, like you said, on the left side, more short term you are, the more it gets into physics, the less it is a financial market, of course, because it really has to work then also physically. The more on the right side, You also have opportunities then to go into, let's say, more financial transactions. And yeah, the regulation also then in that sense is a bit different if you look at the different time horizons. If we look at the general structure of a PPA, so what is a PPA? It's basically a contract between an offtaker and a power producer to purchase electricity at an agreed price for a specified period. So that's pretty straightforward. Quite a broad definition. Again, we're sticking to this value chain schematics where you have the generator on one side, the consumer, or the in your case then energy intensive industry, or let's say industry generally, on the other side. And there is sort of different opportunities that you then have when it comes to pricing, settlement, and duration. Duration already mentioned. They said it could be quite different, or sort of tailor-made also. In terms of the pricing, it could be a fixed price for the period. It could be an index price, like a reference of a certain exchange, for example, with a down mark, and where you then, let's say, adjust according to whatever the exchange price then is, also longer term. In terms of settlement, it can be physically, so where you're really, let's say, sort of, getting the physical energy, and where you're really looking also at the energy flow like this, or financially, which is completely decoupled from the physical flow of the energy. It could serve as a hedge for you, and as something in a way you could basically lock in a certain price level just on a financial point of view. The other important point here is the connected guarantees of origin. I guess many of you are buying already green electricity from their suppliers, and so you're also buying basically the connected guarantees of origin at an agreed price. The big advantage that we also have here is that it's not just the guarantees of origin that you get, but you could also use the specific location of a power plant. And that's something that then also lots of companies are using for, let's say, marketing purposes and things like that. If we move on, just shortly on the business models that we see, is that it can be done very much tailor-made. And again, the value chain systematic or schematics exactly the same here. But when we talk about upstream, it's towards the producer. When we talk about downstream, it's towards the customer. So what you will mainly find, there are lots of other definitions around that also, but what you will mainly find is utility PPA. So producer does a contract with a utility such as Kelag, for example. And when we are incorporating those volumes into our balancing group, we are, by the way, in Austria at the moment marketing roughly 25% of the whole Austrian wind generation by contracts like this. So it's sort of upstream PPAs or utility PPAs that we did. So that's quite a lot of volume, and we are also offering that to producers of other technologies. Just renewables, by the way, so we're not involved in any PPAs that are not renewables. Also not doing any nuclear PPAs. So it's really just hydro, wind, sun, and then also in fact biomass. So quite a big volume that we have here. In our case, mainly physical contracts that we did so far, but it's also possible, of course, to do that financial or virtual, and most of that is, of course, offsite because, or not on site, because those are bigger wind farms and so on that are placed across Austria. But also, I mean, not just Austria, we're also offering that in other countries, of course, and we're also marketing other assets in other countries. Then intermediary PPAs is basically where we act sort of as a broker. So we are basically just connecting the producer with the respective end customer, and maybe supplying offering certain services which are connected with that. For example, billing or certain balancing group management topics and things like that. From the structure, it's very much similar to a utility PPA in terms of physical or financial are the opportunities actually here. And then last but not least, the downstream part of it, so towards the customer, corporate PPA, something also really highly driven also by the European Union at the moment. So actually the PPA topic in total, but it's also moving more and more towards those corporate PPAs. So this is actually where a utility then has a contract with an industry client. I said we're also offering that. in different forms. This could also be on-site. So we also, as a company, offering ESCO or energy contracting models. And it could really be an on-site PPA where you have the big advantage also of the grid fees that you don't have to pay by consuming the energy directly on your site. And it could also be physical and again financial, of course. Yeah. So there we have, just maybe as an example, we've done several contracts so far. One example would be which we just did a few weeks ago, a fixed price contract with the time horizon of 9 years with a bigger industry client, and where we are, I think, both very satisfied, the industry customer, because they really wanted to lock in also prices longer term. And also then from our point of view, we were actually selling in this case a share of our own generation, and they said that's something that we are definitely actively offering. So on site, and then also, let's say, physical or also financial. So everything is possible for us in this sense here, in these cases here. The next topic which I would like to highlight is that we see quite significant differences in the majority of markets. If you look at the map here, and Pierre already mentioned that before, you can also see that some countries are really sticking out here. So it's again like Iberia, or in fact here Spain, and then also these northern countries, which are really sticking out. They are very much ahead in terms of the development of the markets. There is quite liquid PPA markets available, which is, I think, it was driven there mainly by not having subsidy schemes in place for a relatively long period of time. And that's why also then this market developed. And then you have lots of markets which are maturing, because you see a similar trend also there. So also there, lots of projects are going out of subsidy schemes. And, it's basically, they are trying to find a market also, and trying to find, let's say, a producer with a customer also. And then also, let's say, sort of emerging markets. But the main drivers behind this already mentioned is like the decarbonization, the green transition, of course, which is really driving that. It's also a solid PPA regulatory framework. So that's then a national level, let's say. European Union is driving it, but not yet on every national level. We have, let's say, the preconditions to really conclude those contracts. And it's also then long-term price stability that, let's say, not all of the industry wants, let's say, but most of the industry, I think, wants. And let me explain that maybe a bit, because if you have, and this is also, who are, let's say, candidates, for that, it's actually, if you are in an energy intensive industry where you could conclude longer term contracts with your customers, you might be willing also to secure, let's say, your energy supply for a longer time period. Because you don't get into any mismatch of a pricing that you need to give to your customer versus with the pricing that you have out of the PPA contract. Mentioning also that in most of the cases, it's not like 100% of the supply that is covered by PPAs. It's usually a certain percentage of that. If you think about the slide with the market design, there are also other opportunities, of course, but these are basically the main drivers behind that. However, there are a few barriers also which I would like to clearly mention, and one is the volatility in future prices. So that's the classical market risk. Let's say you conclude a contract today, but of course you don't know what the price is tomorrow, like in a month from now will be, right? So you could conclude to a higher price that would be possible in the future. So that's sort of a barrier, let's say. The availability of subsidy schemes, as I said, in markets where you have subsidy schemes available, producers rather tend into going into those subsidy schemes and not having this energy available on the markets. And then, as mentioned, the difficulty finding a suitable counterparty. There is, if we think about intermediary PPAs, I could really sing a song about that. I had lots of really funny conversations around it also, where you were like really in the middle, and where a producer at the same time tells you that, I think prices will go up, that's why I won't sign. And at the same time, the end customer told you, like, look, I believe prices will go down, that's why I won't sign, right? So that's a bit of an issue there. And I think it's also showing sort of a lack in our region for let's say, platforms where companies can meet. So it's like, it's not really transparent in terms of pricing yet. It's not really transparent in terms of, who is really interested in such a product. It's still something new, but, generally speaking, I really believe that those markets will develop. definitely believing in, let's say, the open market, yeah, or like I mean, as a trader, you always have to believe, of course, in open markets and in that how to say, in market prices and everything. That's what I of course do, and that's why I definitely see quite some future for this. Set really highly depending, also thinking about energy intensive industry now, highly depending also, of course, on how long can you secure prices with your customers. If you're in a situation where you have like quarterly price adjustments, you most probably don't want to, let's say, fix your energy price over a period of 20 years, right? If you have like, more price stability from that point of view, you want to adjust your procurement strategy most probably in a way that you really procure your energy longer term. And then last but not least, what are the key takeaways, right? It's actually an integral part of the EU energy market or slash market design. PPAs are highly customizable to industry needs, so it can really be adjusted, as we said, like from on-site to physical to financial or slash virtual. I mean, in terms of products, shapes, and so on, there is a lot of also flexibility, let's say, through various structures and models. It offers long-term price stability and risk mitigation. The market maturity is really different across Europe, but what they all have in common is that those markets will develop, or they are developing. It's a strong trend that we see, and we're definitely getting better in terms of this market maturity. And then last but not least, it really helps regarding the decarbonization and the green energy transition. We heard from Pierre before that the European Union wants to stick to those goals. So obviously that's sort of set in stone. And at the same time, they're trying to provide, let's say, some solutions regarding the affordability of energy and so on. I think, PPAs can play a role also in there. With that, I think I'm pretty good in time. That will be my presentation, and understood questions then later in the panel, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much, Martin.
All right. Thank you.